King Charles has chosen to step aside from his public duties. The power inside the palace is shifting to Prince William and Catherine. But that's not the part that has everyone talking. The real story is the handwritten sentence buried at the bottom of the succession order. A sentence that effectively shut Camilla out of the monarchy's decision-making process completely. From what we're hearing, she didn't see it coming until the document was already signed and sealed. Buckingham Palace has finally confirmed what half of London has been whispering about for weeks. King Charles is stepping back from his public duties. Charles has been trying to project stability for months. Staged photos of him working at his desk. Statements insisting he was keeping up with his red boxes. Assurances that his cancer treatment wasn't slowing him down. But behind the scenes, the reality was very different. Meetings were cancelled. Ceremonies were shortened. Prince William was quietly absorbing more and more of the king's public schedule. The breaking point happened during a rehearsal for a state ceremony in London. Charles showed up determined to get through it. But witnesses say he physically couldn't keep up. The color drained from his face. His answers got shorter. His focus drifted. Eventually, the room had to be cleared and his doctors were called. Their message was blunt. If he didn't stop pushing himself, he was going to undo all the progress he'd made. He needed to surrender most of his responsibilities immediately. That led to an emergency meeting at Buckingham Palace. William, Catherine, Princess Anne, and a small group of constitutional advisors were summoned without explanation. They were sitting around a table with a sealed folder in the center. The title was simple: The Royal Continuity and Succession Order. At first, William assumed it was just about a few cancelled engagements. Catherine thought it was a temporary adjustment. Then Charles opened the document and explained what it actually did. It transfers state audiences, senior palace appointments, ceremonial planning, and the long-term direction of the monarchy directly to William. And then he turned to Catherine. Under this order, she would assume responsibilities normally expected of the reigning queen. State banquets, diplomatic receptions, the royal household's public program. Basically, the visible duties that tell Britain and the Commonwealth who is actually at the center of royal life now. Catherine didn't respond right away. Accepting a role like that changes how every single future appearance is interpreted. It's one thing to support your husband. It's another to step into a position that makes you look like you're already the queen in waiting. William pushed back, too. He told Charles that people might think he forced this transition. That it would look like ambition rather than necessity. But Charles was clear. The decision was his. Protecting the monarchy couldn't mean pretending his strength hadn't changed. He was trying to shield them from the blame. Before the meeting continued, Princess Anne placed a second folder on the table. Inside were confidential notes from members of Camilla's household. These weren't casual emails. They were plans. Plans for how Camilla could preserve her authority if Charles withdrew. How her office could retain influence over ceremonies, appointments, and the palace program. How William's control could be treated as temporary. William read the first page twice. Catherine stayed completely still. The implications were impossible to ignore. While Charles was struggling to maintain his duties, Camilla's household was already discussing how to keep power in her hands. Neither William nor Catherine had been invited into those conversations. The proposal described an advisory arrangement based at Clarence's house. It would allow Camilla's office to review ceremonial plans, recommend changes to the royal diary, and stay involved in state banquets and public appearances. One paragraph actually suggested that William's expanded authority should be described as temporary, even if Charles stayed away for months. That sentence changed the entire room. William asked who wrote it. Charles read the names in silence. He hadn't approved the meeting. He hadn't requested the proposal. And he definitely hadn't been told that his wife's household was already discussing how to preserve influence after he stepped back. Charles reached the final page of the succession order. The signature line waited beneath the royal seal. But instead of signing, Charles began to write slowly in the blank space below the last clause. No authority granted through this document may be challenged by the Queen's household. That one sentence changed everything. The order was no longer just a medical arrangement. It was a barrier. Charles hadn't merely transferred responsibility to his son. He had blocked the office most likely to contest how that responsibility would be used. That mattered. Typed language could be blamed on advisors. Legal phrasing could be described as routine. A handwritten sentence from the king could not be dismissed as an administrative misunderstanding. Charles signed beneath the handwritten sentence. And signed as witness. William placed his hand on the document but didn't pick it up. For a few seconds, father and son remained on opposite sides of the table. The paper between them had changed more than the royal diary. It had changed the center of power. A secretary entered, sealed the copies, and asked where the first should be delivered. Charles answered without hesitation, Clarence's house. Camilla received it before the announcement was even drafted. She turned the pages, reached the handwritten line, and stopped. Then she called for her staff. At Clarence's house, Camilla's staff expected anger. What they saw instead was control. She placed the copy of the order on a table and asked each advisor to read the handwritten sentence. No one spoke. The words were too direct. They left no space for negotiation. Camilla asked whether the sentence could be softened before the announcement. Her legal advisor answered carefully. The king had written it himself. The seal had been applied. And had witnessed the signature. Any attempt to alter the wording would require Charles to reopen the order. Camilla understood the problem. Charles had closed the door before she could reach it. The palace statement was released. Charles was not abdicating. William was not being crowned. Catherine was not being declared queen. Yet every practical detail pointed toward the same reality. Authority was moving. Public responsibility was moving. The visible weight of the crown was moving with it. Camilla was missing from the announcement. Her arrival time had been left blank. A place remained available near Charles during the opening statement, but no role had been assigned to her afterward. She could attend as his wife. She could not participate as a decision-maker. Camilla cancelled her car outside Buckingham Palace. Broadcasters went live. Crowds gathered beyond the gates. The first images showed William and Catherine entering through a side entrance. Camilla was nowhere to be seen. This story was never really about Charles's health. Or a power shift. Or even Camilla's secret plan. It was about one sentence. One handwritten sentence that changed everything. Charles had spent years balancing affection, duty, history, and guilt. Now every compromise led back to the same problem. Camilla wanted recognition for standing beside him. William needed unquestioned authority as heir. Catherine needed protection from accusations that she had taken something not hers. The monarchy needed one voice. Only one of those needs could govern the order. Charles chose institutional certainty over private peace. He did it in his own handwriting. And that made it permanent. Camilla didn't see it coming. She didn't know until the document was already signed and sealed. The door was closed before she could reach it. The crown couldn't live inside a pause. Charles knew that. He made sure the future wouldn't wait for pride to admit what duty already knew. Subscribe to Royal Finance for more royal investigations. Drop your thoughts below. Was Charles right to write that sentence? I read every single comment. See you in the next one.